Welcome into a championship weekend edition of Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. My name is Brandon Adams. Hopefully you've been with us for the entirety of the season. If not, I'll give you an idea about how things are about to go for the next few minutes. You'll hear from the entirety of the Dog Nation team, Mike Griffith, Jeff Sintel, Connor Riley, and myself. We'll give you our thoughts on the biggest games of the weekend, including Georgia LSU. Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers have their chance to weigh in. From that, we form a consensus, and then R.S. Andrews' own Dari Pero gets to decide if he wants to go with the flow, join that consensus, and make his pick with the rest of us. And, of course, we invite everyone to kind of play along, and so many of you do, your own thoughts about these games as we head towards the weekend. Before we jump into this week's picks, let's take a look at our big board here in terms of how things have played out. Not a great week for me a week ago. Dari, not quite as hot as he's been there as well. Connor, though, pretty impressive performance. 8-3 he goes on the week, which sends his record for the season spectacular. 70-51-1 for Connor. Dari and I both 4-7 last week, but Dari still solidly a winning record on the year. 67-54-1. Me, the exact inverse of that, at 54-67-1. Those are the stories for the season. Dari Pero, how you feeling about this week's slate of games?
Oh, I'm feeling really good. I'm kind of upset about last week because there were 4 games that, I changed at the last minute.
Yeah.
The Georgia, Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Oklahoma games. And I kind of put those picks, and those cost me 4 games. So I'm a little upset I'm not going with my gut instinct.
Yeah.
So that just means this week I need to run the table and go 9-0. And it's going to be legendary as I retake this lead.
I like the legendary, and you've been calling for Georgia to run the table all season long. That's worked thus far. Maybe it works the same way for your picks as well. And speaking of the Georgia Bulldogs, we'll get ready to begin right there. SEC Championship, 4 p.m. in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Of course, the SEC West representative is the undefeated LSU Tigers. Georgia coming into the game at 11-1 on the year. The number, we're going to call it 7.5. There are different numbers out there depending on where you shop and when. We'll call it Georgia right now a 7.5-point underdog. And Mike Griffith will let you begin in terms of giving us your thoughts about how the game is going to go.
I think this game's going to be tough for Georgia. Obviously, George Pickens being out the first half, I think that makes a big difference. But if Georgia can stay even or be ahead of LSU after one half, I think Georgia can win this game, and that's why I'm going to take Georgia to cover the 7.5-point spread. If LSU does win, it's not going to be a blowout. This defense is too good for that, and again, if Georgia can stay even with or have a lead over LSU at halftime, I believe Georgia will win that football game.
So Mike Griffith likes the Dogs to be able to keep it close there against LSU inside the number. Jeff Sintel, what do you think?
Gosh, where to start, where to begin, where to end with this game? I like Georgia, especially with that points. Give me the points, give me the Bulldogs, and a great outcome on Saturday.
So 2 in a row from the Scribes and 2 in a row thus far on the side of the Georgia Bulldogs. Dog Nation Daily, listeners and viewers, judging anecdotally, you don't always hear a ton of confidence about this game. How about those willing to cast a vote and a ballot? 69% do take Georgia. That's lower than it's been for most of the year in terms of the Georgia game, but 2-1 margin. Dog fans like the Dogs here in this spot. Connor, you've been covering it close. You've been in Athens all week long. Your opinion matters on this. How you feel about the 7.5 when it comes to Georgia as a dog against LSU?
I feel a lot better about this game if it's at 7.5 instead of 6.5 where it opened up at. But I can give you some reasons why I think Georgia is going to be in this game. Georgia since the start of 2017 season, this comes from Chris Felica, they've been an underdog a total of 5 times.
Saw this number.
Against the spread, you know what their record is?
I actually do because I got it in front of me here, but I'll let you tell the rest of the folks.
It is 5-0, and if I'm remembering correctly, 3 of those games have been in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Auburn SEC Championship game 2017, and then the last 2 times against Alabama. And, anecdotally, we heard all week, how are you going to slow down this dynamic LSU offense? They got receivers, they got running backs. Joe Burrow's the Heisman Trophy frontrunner. This is all the same stuff we heard a season ago.
Yep.
This Georgia defense did a pretty good job against Tua in that Alabama offense a season ago. I think they're going to do something similar this week against LSU, and this is a better defense than it was a year ago. I know there are concerns about the offense. I know George Pickens isn't going to be there in the first half. Having said all that, at 7.5, give me the Georgia Bulldogs.
Connor mentioned the Chris Felica number. 5 straight underdog situations Georgia's covered in. 3 of those are also outright wins, according to the Bear. Now, another number that he gives us that does cause me to really respect LSU Orgeron in particular as a spot against a top 10 team, Orgeron's on a 13-2-1 run against the spread against those opponents. In his LSU years, he's 6-1-1 against the spread against these top 10 teams. Those are non-Bama top 10 teams, by the way. I should clarify. Non-Bama top 10. Orgeron's been a really good coach. I talked about this with Brad Nessler on Dog Nation Daily on Thursday, that this gregarious personality sometimes belies a really sharp coaching mind and a guy who runs a really, really impressive program behind the scenes. So I don't think it's going to be easy for Georgia. I've got great respect for LSU, but I do trust Georgia as an underdog in this spot. I'm going to pick with my heart instead of my head. I think Georgia finds a way to keep it close. I think they have a chance to win the game, but obviously a lot of that's wishful thinking. I got no apologies for that. Give me the dogs. Talk about a Dog Nation special here. Georgia against LSU, and it's a clean sweep thus far. Dogs over the Tigers. Dar, you want to join the flow and go with the flow and take Georgia here?
Well, the smart money's on LSU, but I'm not that smart, so I'm going to go with the flow, and I'm going to take the Dogs. Georgia's been played in this game. This will be their third year. They have experience in this game, in this moment. Georgia's defense has played great in all their big games this year. I expect that to happen in the biggest game of the year to date. I think they will make LSU one-dimensional, and that will keep this game close. Make no mistake, this is a tall ordering task for the Dogs. They have to play a perfect game on both sides of the ball. My concern in this game is going to be in the fourth quarter. In Georgia's big games this year, they've given up yards and points in the fourth quarter, and that was for Notre Dame, Florida, Auburn, and A&M. So they're going to need to play all four quarters, a primo performance, and they can't fall behind early. That could be disastrous for them. But I like the Dogs to try to control the clock in this game and have a really good defensive showing.
Hey, it's Go With The Flow presented by R.S. Andrews. You're Dari Payro there. Air, heating, plumbing, electric, whatever need you might have with one of those situations in your house, R.S. Andrews can put a smile on your face when they take care of that problem, including that $99 mega furnace safety check to make sure your heating system is ready to go for the winter to come, and it's also safe for you and your family. Check them out online at rsandrews.com for a whole lot more on that. And speaking of a whole lot more, we'll have a whole lot more in the SEC Championship, Georgia and LSU, before we're done. For now, though, let's look at a few of the other games and head to Friday night. Is this still Santa Clara? Is this still the 49ers Stadium for the Pac-12 title game? Utah and Oregon. The Utes only lost this year at USC. Oregon looking at 2 losses beginning of the season to the Auburn Tigers in a non-conference tilt, and then a couple of weeks ago in Tempe against Arizona State. Utah's got a lot to play for here. Chance to be in the college football playoff, potentially, if it finds a way to win. And because of that, they're a 6.5-point favorite. Mike Griffith on the Pac-12 game from Friday night. Why don't you lead things off?
That Utah is contending for a playoff spot. I think the Ducks are going to spoil the party. I know that Oregon is a 6.5-point underdog, but I'm going to take Oregon to win that game straight up. I just don't think Utah has played in a game with this much pressure.
So he goes underdog here. He likes the Ducks to find a way to keep this one close. Jeff Sintel.
Friday night. Utah can really play some defense. Oregon. I'm going to take Oregon in this game. I like Oregon covering that spread.
So a lot of Duck love thus far. How about Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers? How you feel about this game? Let's take a look and see what they have to say about all of this. All right, so Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers took a pass on the Pac-12 title game. Connor Riley, what about you? What do you want to say about this one?
Well, so a lot of people are going to be on Oregon. They think they're the flashier team, the more talented team. But this Utah team is a darn good football team. For all the talk we've done about Georgia and their rush defense, Utah ranks first in the country by a solid 20 yards. They're going to make Oregon a not great rushing team already, one-dimensional. They're going to put this game on Justin Herbert's shoulders to win it, and I know he's going to be a first-round pick next year. But I like Utah in this situation. I know the committee's getting ready to screw them out of a playoff spot, but give me the Utes here to win by a touchdown.
So I think
7 points.
So I think that's a really interesting pick. Obviously, Utah is 6.5-point favorite, so Connor likes them there in that spot. Reading up on this game a little bit, one of the things I was interested in, I'm going to do more of a feel pick on this as opposed to putting a lot of numbers behind this. I was really interested to see the number of Oregon fans who have seemingly treated their team like Georgia fans have treated Georgia. Great offensive line, really good quarterback prospect, but maybe some criticism that Oregon's been a little too conservative at times offensively. I've seen some fan talk on that, so keep that in mind for the game. Ultimately, when I first saw this spread, it sort of initially seemed too low for me. Now, I think Utah's a really good team, but it just sort of initially seemed too low, like we're reading too much into a bad loss at Arizona State. I don't have a strong feel about this game whatsoever, but just the initial number, 6.5, seemed too low. I don't have a strong feel on this. I do think Utah is good, but I'm going to take the Ducks here and just kind of take a flyer on the Friday night TV show actually being pretty fun to watch with the underdogs showing up and playing hard. So give me Oregon. That puts the flow on the side of Oregon. Dar, you want to go with the flow?
Yes, I'm going to take the Ducks. Oregon's a really good team, and Utah hasn't played anybody this good all year. They're ranked 92nd in strength of schedule. They're going to get an awakening when they place Oregon, who's just a better team and has way more NFL talent on both sides of the ball. I think Justin Herbert's the X factor in this game, and he's going to keep this game close.
So good pick there from Dari Payro. By the way, he mentioned kind of an easier schedule that the Utes have managed. 8 straight they have covered, so keep that in mind as Cal Whittingham's team heads up to Northern California here this weekend. Let's go noon Saturday now. Big 12 title game. A lot of folks think if chalk holds for LSU in the SEC championship, Oklahoma-Utah could be a comparison for the fourth playoff spot if everything works out according to form. Oklahoma is a 9-point favorite here against the Baylor Bears. This was a rematch from a game a couple of weeks ago in which Oklahoma came storming back from a 25-point deficit to get the win on the banks of the Brazos in Waco. Big 12 title game. Baylor and Oklahoma. Sooners favored by 9. Mike Griffith, start us off.
As much as I want to go with Baylor because I have this Oklahoma fatigue, I think Oklahoma's going to take care of business. I think it's just too much Oklahoma. I think they're going to win, and they're going to cover a 9-point spread and potentially play themselves into the college football playoff.
So he takes the Oklahoma Sooners, although somewhat begrudgingly. Jeff Sintel, what about you?
Which one of the Lincoln Rallies are going to show up? Jalen Hurts. Some playoff mojo implications for this one, certainly. That line, I like Oklahoma in this game, and I like them to cover.
So Boomer Sooner thus far from both of our scribes, Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers. You want to weigh in on this Big 12 title game? Your thoughts on how this one plays out? 62% do take Oklahoma. Connor, you seem to think that Oklahoma is going to wriggle its way into the playoff, apparently at least in comparison to Utah, assuming that Georgia loses. What's your thought on the Big 12 title game then?
You know, earlier this season when these two teams met, I believe the line was Baylor plus 10. And I didn't really understand it, and I called it the squarest pick of the season. They were basically begging you to pick Baylor in that game. And because of that, I just naturally, contrarian, went Oklahoma. And then Baylor got up 28-3 and then peed down its leg, and we know what happened from there. But I know the committee wants to put Oklahoma in the playoff. I know they want to, box out the Pac-12, box out the superior team in Utah. But I think Baylor's going to get it done this time.
Really?
Give me the 9 points here. It's just too many. These teams were really even, I think, over the course of the game. And, Baylor was in Oklahoma territory before, unfortunately, got intercepted to end that game. And this Oklahoma team, am I really supposed to believe that they're a playoff team because they went on the road and beat an Oklahoma State team playing a backup quarterback last week? They played a lot of one-score games. I think this could be another one. Give me the Bears here in the 9 points.
So I really like the boldness of your pick. I think it's fun to find an underdog to rally in support of on championship weekend. We're also on a similar wavelength, except opposite sides of the point spread situation here, because you mentioned the point spread in the previous matchup. I, too, was interested in the fact that in Waco, Oklahoma was a 10.5-point favorite a couple of weeks ago. Now, neutral site, they're just a 9-point favorite, so we've essentially subtracted 4-5 points in terms of our projection of this game off these two teams, off the basis of a couple of weeks. I'm not quite so sure Baylor keeping it close with Oklahoma in Waco is the argument in favor of the Bears that maybe some people want it to be, given the fact that they totally collapsed in the second half of that game, could not find a way to win it. Once again, this is a feel play for me. I've given you numbers all season long. Frankly, my numbers haven't been very good because my record's not very good. It's a feel play for me here. I think Oklahoma's got a lot to play for. I think they've got a high-powered enough offense to put up a little bit of a show. Remember, CeeDee Lamb does not play in the previous matchup against Baylor. That probably matters here. So I'm going to take a flyer on the favorite -9. I think it's actually representing value in comparison to the previous point spread. So give me the Sooners, and that puts the flow on the side of the Sooners. Dar, you want to go with the flow?
Yes, I'm going to take the Sooners, going with the flow. Oklahoma's not going to turn the ball over like they did in as much in the last match. They made their adjustments. In the second half, they dominated that game. Lincoln Riley wants to get in the playoffs, but I think he ratchets up the offense, and he's going to pour on the points, and he's going to do everything he can to win big in this game.
So a lot of love for the Sooners here. The favorite in the Big 12 title game. We'll follow that. It's Go With the Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. Story after story, they've been delivering smiles, and they can deliver a smile for you if you're dealing with a water heater issue, if the hot water's not flowing out of your shower, or if the heat's not flowing out of your vents. Well, listen, that's the kind of thing that'll put a frown on your wife's face for sure. So put smiles back on everyone in your household's face by checking out R.S. Andrews online at rsandrews.com. All right, we're going to pick some fun games this week, kind of off the radar because it's Championship Saturday. It's that kind of weekend. Let us go now. This is the Sun Belt, right? Louisiana and Appalachian State. Sun Belt title game. Appalachian State, the game is played in Boone, North Carolina, so that does matter. You could assume that weather might be a factor there, although I don't have a forecast. But it's a home game for the Mountaineers, hosting Louisiana. That's what they like to be called, but they are Louisiana Lafayette, so you should know. Their alias is Louisiana, but the team itself is actually Louisiana Lafayette. The Ragin' Cajuns go on the road here as 6.5-point underdogs. Mike Griffith, our first Sun Belt pick of the year. Give us your thoughts on this one.
I'm going to take Appalachian State. They're a 6.5-point favorite. And I think with this win, Appalachian State is going to slide into the group of 5.
So he likes Appalachian State, who's been a good team all season long. Obviously pulled the shocker over South Carolina a little earlier in the season. Jeff Sintel, how about you?
Give me a second. I'm processing everything I know about the offensive lines and defensive lines and matchups in this game. I want to take Appalachian State in this one.
So Jeff pretty clearly having some fun with the fact that we're picking such an off-the-radar type game. Honestly, a lot of these times, these games can be pretty fun. Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers, 66% do take App State, so they take the 2017 Georgia opponent over the 2016 Georgia opponent. So I guess that's the scouting report that dog fans use to come up with their opinion on Appalachian State versus Louisiana. Connor, do you have any opinion on this game whatsoever, one way or another?
I think that App State is the second best team in the states of North and South Carolina. I think Clemson is the first. I think if App State were on Clemson's schedule, they'd be the second best team. Clemson would have played all year behind Texas A&M.
Good take. If I was Tony Reale, I'd be giving you some points right now because I think that's a pretty good take.
They beat South Carolina. They beat North Carolina. I think they have an outside shot at getting into that Group of 5 bowl. I don't think they're going to be able to jump they're going to be able to jump Memphis or Cincinnati because I think the winner of that game is pretty clearly going to be the Group of 5 team now that plays in the Cotton Bowl. But give me App State here. 6.5, again, it's a good number to get them at. You know, if this were 7.5, I'd maybe be a little bit more inclined to the Louisiana team. But give me App State here at 6.5.
All right, so that's the number on that. Now, I don't know anything about either of these two teams, but I will cite a number from the Bear, Chris Felica, that I also saw on Twitter. Billy Napier is the Ragin' Cajuns coach. 7-3 is an underdog, and in the 4 instances when he's been an underdog of less than 7, he's won outright 3 times. This is one of those weekends that, for the most part, favorites have dominated. But as I mentioned to Connor before, you want to find a underdog to kind of get behind and an underdog to kind of believe in. Based on that number, it's not my own research. It's the Bears, but I'll use it nonetheless. I think Louisiana's worth a shot here. It is on the road. Boone will probably be loud. It'll probably be cold. It may even snow. I'm sure the folks in Louisiana have no idea what that's like. But honestly, I'm going to talk myself into Napier here as an underdog. I will take the Ragin' Cajuns. Now, the flow is on the side of Appalachian State. Dar, you want to go with the flow?
I do not. I'm going to take Louisiana Lafayette. You know, App State has dominated this series. They're 7-0 against Louisiana since 2014. They already beat them earlier this year. But the key to this game will be Louisiana's running game. They're 10-0 when they eclipse over 200 yards rushing in a game, and they're 0-2 when they don't. In the first matchup, App State dominated the time of possession. I think in this game, that flips, and the Ragin' Cajuns are able to run the ball. I like them. They even have an outside shot of winning this outright. Give me the Cajuns.
Fun stuff there from the Sun Belt. Let's keep it fun and go American Athletic Conference. Rematch from a game we saw last week. Same venue as well. Liberty Bowl, once again the site for Cincinnati, Memphis. Memphis, an 11-point favorite last week, won by 10. Now a 9-point favorite in the American Athletic Conference championship game. Mike Griffith, start us off.
And Memphis won. I don't like it when teams play back-to-back weeks. I think it's an advantage to the losing team. I think Cincinnati is going to beat Memphis and knock them out of the group of 5 spot in the New Year's Six Bowls.
So Bearcats there for Mike Griffith. Jeff Sintel, what about you?
Another rematch. Memphis with the 9-point favorite against Cincinnati. That game was eerily close. I like Memphis to cover that spread in that game.
Going Mike Norvell with a possible swan song there with the Tigers of Memphis. Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers, you got any thoughts on the AAC? 54% do take Memphis on this. Connor, you and I were both on Memphis last week. You still on the? You were on the other side last week. Are you still on the Bearcats for this week?
Yeah, I believe I was the only one a week ago to correctly predict that Memphis would not win by 11 points.
Right, they won by 10.
And rather by 10. You know, I think I'm going to ride Cincinnati one more time. They kept it within 10 last week, and I kind of think maybe they weren't showing their entire cards, knowing that there was a real chance they'd see Memphis again.
So much like Georgia, they had some secret plays they were saving up.
They got some secrets there, some secret hidden bear claws in there somewhere. Give me the Bearcats here. You know, if they find a way to do this, you know, hats off to you, Cincinnati. You really saved my bacon last week, winning by or only losing by 10 when you were an 11-point underdog. Salute to you for that, and I'm going to pick you again this week because of it.
I was on Memphis last week, 11-point favorite, won by 10. But instead of like crying about that, I've got to be honest with you. Watching most of that game, which I did because it was on Friday, I never really felt like that Memphis was necessarily the right side of the game in terms of the cover. Now, I think that Memphis is the better team, but given the number, I just never felt all that confident about it. So having a chance to kind of go back the other way, I think I will go the other way here. I'm gonna give Cincinnati a try. I'm grasping at straws, but watching that game last week, Memphis was the better team, but not 11 points better. And so given the number at 9 right now, especially just given the way that rematches have a tendency by at least a point or two to favor the other side, I'll take a flyer on the Bearcats. And that puts the flow, I believe, on the side of the Bearcats, does it not? Flow on the side of Cincinnati here. Dar, you want to go with the underdog and take the Cincinnati Bearcats?
I do not. I'm going to take the Memphis Tigers. You know, last week, Cincy kind of mixed it up at the last minute by starting a freshman quarterback. So Memphis really didn't have a lot to game plan for that. And Cincinnati, even though they had 3 turnovers last week, played one of their best games of the year. And they lost by 10. I don't see Cincinnati duplicating that effort. I think Memphis is going to be better game plan for that type of quarterback. I'm going to go back with Memphis. I think they cover in fashion by 20 points. And I think Norvell, at the end of the game, will be announced as a new head coach for Florida State.
Wow, that's a big prediction, especially with the look of things that guys like Bob Stoops and others are going to kind of stay away from that. Pretty interesting stuff there from Dari Payro. Speaking of interesting, let's head to another Group of 5 title game. This one, the Mountain West. The winner of the Mountain West West is Hawaii. The winner of the Mountain West Mountain, which is what they call their divisions, is Boise State. The Broncos will get a chance to play host to the Rainbow Warriors there at Albertson Stadium in Boise. And Boise State is a 13.5-point favorite in this game, looking for some revenge after having lost the Mountain West title game a year ago to Fresno State. They want to have a better taste in their mouth this year. They are 13.5-point favorites. Mike Griffith, your thoughts on the Mountain West?
I think the Broncos are going to finish right behind Appy State because I think they will beat Hawaii. They're a 13.5-point favorite. I think they'll cover. Hawaii typically doesn't play too well on the mainland. Different team out there on the island.
So he goes the side of the Broncos on this. Jeff Sintel, what do you think?
Man, love these picks. Love the cultural nature, catching all the states in the American map. I like Boise State in that game against Hawaii, covering. Going to see a lot of things in these championship games this weekend. A lot of large point spreads.
Clean sweep for Boise State thus far on this one. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers. They haven't seen Boise on the field since 2011 and 2005, Georgia's 2 meetings with Boise State. But nonetheless, they've seen enough to like them to the tune of 70%, the number 19 team in the country against Hawaii. Connor, this could be a tough road spot for Hawaii. It's a tough place to play anyway, and I'm sure weather will likely be a factor, at least colder than it is on the island of Hawaii. What do you think about this game?
I like Boise State here. Chris Peterson announced his retirement from Washington this week. Brian Harsin this could be his last game of Boise. He's been mentioned for some of the openings, specifically at Missouri. I think Boise actually has a very good chance of, if they really come out and play impressively here, of putting their name into that group of 5, Cotton Bowl bid. So give me the Broncos here on the blue turf up there in Boise.
Yeah, I'm going to take Boise here as well, and I mentioned weather before. I have seen the forecast on this. I believe it's only supposed to be in the 40s, so I don't think it's going to be quite as cold here as it might be. Once again, this is a feel thing for me. I think the travel here is really tough. Hawaii's actually had more impressive performances this season, you might think, but not enough to make me not like Boise. Big number, but you got to pick some favorites somewhere, and Boise feels like a pretty good favorite to me. I'll take the Broncos. Dar, you want to go with the flow and take Boise State?
I do not.
Wow.
I'm going to take the Rainbow Warriors.
Nice.
I like Hawaii here. Boise State has dominated this series. They beat them earlier this year. These are 2 explosive offenses, but I expect this to be more of a defensive game. I think it goes under the 64-65 total. I think Hawaii does enough to keep this game close, and I'm rooting for the Rainbow Warriors in this one. Just a note, it opened at 15.5. There's been a lot of money coming on Hawaii, and that's dropped it to 13.5.
That's a good note,
It's
Dari.
probably going to continue to go down.
Good note, Dari. I'm glad you shared that. That's important information there. All right, let's head back into Power 5 territory here, at least a close approximation of that, in the ACC, where Clemson takes on Virginia. This game is in Charlotte, I believe, and Clemson is a 28.5-point favorite. They've been like more than a 3-touchdown favorite in every game this season but one. This has been, a very, very easy cakewalk for the Tigers thus far. Does that continue in the ACC title game? Mike Griffith, you can start us off.
Yeah, it's like, why do they even play this game? Well, Dabo will tell you, because everybody wants him out of the playoff. Clemson's going to beat Virginia. I don't think they're going to cover the 28.5-point spread, though. I'm going to take the Cavs to cover, Clemson to win the game.
So taking a flyer on the Wahoos is Mike Griffith. He's taking a lot of dogs as of late. Jeff Sintel, what do you think?
Wahoos, Virginia Cavaliers, mobile quarterback. Remember when Dabo Swinney said that Clemson is in a very good league and that Virginia is a good team and they would be 9-3 in a lot of leagues? I'm not buying that. I think Clemson will cover that game by the 38.
He is going to go on the side of the Clemson Tigers, so interesting stuff there. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers, 63% do take Dabo here, and I like the way that says. Dabo over Virginia. Connor Riley, what do you think about this game?
This Clemson team, before Dabo has sort of gone apocalyptic about, Clemson's disrespect, I think they do have a case as being the best team in the country, just given it's really hard to win by 4 touchdowns every single week, and that's just about what they've done. They have not sleptwalked other than that North Carolina game earlier in the season. And the team we have seen over the past 8 weeks has just destroyed everybody. As Jeff mentioned, Bryce Perkins is a really good quarterback. He might be one of the better players in recent Virginia memory. Last week they beat Virginia Tech, first time in 15 years. Essentially that's going to clinch them a spot to the Orange Bowl. And unfortunately, I think it also clinched them a beatdown from Clemson. I know 28.5 is a lot, and that half is really giving me some pause here. But give me the Tigers here. I can see them winning by 31, 35 points. They're the better team.
Yeah, I think motivation's a factor in all of this. I think that Clemson's got it. Dabo has shot his mouth off a lot. You got to back it up when you talk that way. I just kind of think that's the thing here. Virginia is probably a better team than some people realize, but not good enough to keep it close with Clemson. Give me the Clemson. That puts the flow on the side of the Tigers. Dar, you want to go with the flow?
Going with the flow, I'm taking Clemson. I like them in a blowout after a perfect season. I think their defense is going to hold Virginia to single digits in this game, and I think Clemson's just going to score like 40+ points.
All right, good stuff there. Let's get ready to continue now with the Big Ten title game. Another one of these rematches where I think, frankly, the point spread is a little difficult to explain given where the number rested when these two teams played the first time around. But it is Wisconsin, it is Ohio State, and the Buckeyes here are a 16-point favorite. Mike Griffith, you know the Big Ten pretty well, so give us your thoughts on Badgers and Buckeyes.
These teams met earlier this year. Wisconsin's quarterback, there's a lot of quarterbacks at the JV level in Georgia with a better arm than this Wisconsin quarterback. They're too one-dimensional. They can't beat Ohio State, and I don't think they'll even come close. I've got Ohio State covering the 16-point spread.
So Ohio State is the pick from Mike Griffith. Jeff Sintel, how about you?
I think this is a statement week for Ohio State. Another statement week. I think they show, or at least they try to show, that they're the number one team in the land. Earn that spot to Arizona. from the selection committee. I think Ohio State wins this game against the Badgers. Huge.
So OHIO for Jeff, if he's not careful, get the pick wrong. It could be an OHIOU situation, but nonetheless, he takes the Buckeyes for now. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers. So 52% take whiskey here. They going Wisconsin over Ohio State is the slim majority of Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers. Connor, I kind of gave you a little bit of a tip off on my feelings on this before. Much like the Big 12 title game, this point spread is a little bit weird considering where it was when these two teams played in Columbus just a few weeks ago.
So I got to watch a lot of this game the first time around, and Justin Fields really killed Wisconsin with his legs in this game. They weren't. He didn't have a ton of success throwing the ball that day. Granted, it was rainy, whereas this game will be played indoors in Indianapolis. But I think Wisconsin's going to have a better plan of how to defend Justin Fields, of how to defend J.K. Dobbins. Because I think if you stopping the key to beating Ohio State is just stopping J.K. Dobbins, and that's much easier said than done. But I think Wisconsin's going to be able to do that. I don't know if they're going to be able to score enough points to win this game, but I do think that this could be like a 24-10 kind of thing. And doing the math here, the difference in 24 and 10 is 14. I don't feel great about this, but give me Wisconsin here in the 16.
Yeah, I'm actually going to take Wisconsin too. And this is a contradiction from where I have been, but honestly, my picks have been terrible, so I've got to shake things up a little bit. I've said before in recent weeks I was going to stay away from the train that is Ohio State, but believe it or not, and sometimes this matters, sometimes this doesn't, some of the sites that kind of track money and bets, there's about 20% of the money on this one coming in on Wisconsin. So this is not necessarily a one-way street out there in terms of people betting the Buckeyes. Somebody thinks they know something about whiskey here. I mentioned the point spread being kind of weird. It was only 14.5 as a closing number in Columbus when these two teams played a little while ago. And now in a neutral site game, it's up to 16. Now you can say, well, Ohio State's been the best team in the country. But look what Wisconsin has done in the aftermath of that loss to Ohio State. Won a game against Iowa, won a game at Minnesota. I think the Badgers, all things being equal, have actually acquitted themselves pretty well after losing to Ohio State. I don't think they necessarily come across as a much worse team because of that. Connor mentioned the game being in Indianapolis. The NFL guys will say that this is kind of thought of as a fast track in the league, whereas outdoor stadium like Santa Clara that hosts the Pac-12 title game is kind of thought of an under palace, one of those stadiums where guys typically play a step slower. My understanding is there's a really good chance that Justin Fields has some sort of protective situation around his knee given the injury that he suffered last week against Michigan. Is that enough to slow him down a step or two? Maybe so. Obviously, we don't wish injuries, but in terms of factoring that in the point spread, a slower Justin Fields may be worth thinking about here. So I've got it at 16. I think whiskey's worth the flyer here. Worth a look, plus the 16, so give me the Badgers. That actually puts the flow on the side of Wisconsin. Dar, you want to go with the flow?
I do not. I'm going to take the Buckeyes. We've already seen this matchup play out. I don't see anything that's changed my mind and how this outcome is going to be. Even with Wisconsin, having some good victories as of late, I just don't see it, especially while they're playing indoors. That's a huge advantage for Ohio State and their speed. I just don't see Wisconsin being able to keep up, putting up points.
Quick question, Dari. Does the lack of motivation here, where like Oklahoma has to have a big score against a Baylor, Clemson probably wants one because of its doubters, Ohio State doesn't have those doubters. All they need to do is win. Does the lack of motivation play into your handicap in this game at all?
No, I think they do have motivation. I think they do want to win big and convincingly because if LSU was to win big against Georgia, they regain that first seed.
Fair enough.
So I think, Ohio State wants to be number one going into the playoff. I think they're going to be Ohio State like Ohio State's been all year. They're going to want to put up points. They're going to want to have big victories. I don't think anything's going to change from that. I don't think they're going to lose any focus on that.
Fair enough. Speaking of putting up points, we'll turn our attention back now to the SEC championship game and Georgia and LSU. The total rests at 54.5, which is a higher Georgia total than we have seen in quite some time. Maybe even all. Has Georgia had a 50-something total all year long? Hard to remember one that might have been. Obviously easy to understand why in this case because of the high-powered, prolific offense that is the LSU Tigers. Georgia did go over last week for just the second time in Power 5 play this season in its win against Georgia Tech. So with the over-under set at 54.5, Mike Griffith, start us off.
Over-under is 54.5. Boy, I wouldn't touch this bet because that's real close to where I think it's going to be. I'm actually going to take the under. That's what I got.
So an underplay for a Mike Griffith. They even gave you the thumbs down on that. Jeff Sintel, your thoughts over under the 54.5.
I'm going under in this football game. Under in this football game. I hope so.
Under as well for Jeff Sintel. And if you want Georgia to win, you may need that under to come sailing through on Saturday. That's all I'm going to say about that. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers, they've been over pickers all season long, so 55% taking the over here. I don't think that's good news for Georgia partisans, but nonetheless, the public likes the over as per usual. Connor Riley, your thoughts on 54.5? Georgia riding a streak of one consecutive game going over.
So last year when Georgia played in this game against Alabama, yes, Georgia's offense was significantly better than it was a season ago. What was the score in that game?
35-28, I actually don't remember.
35-28,
Yeah.
and that do you know what that amounts to, points-wise?
Is that 63?
That is 63. To
Yes!
get to 54.5.
I'm not good at doing math in my head.
What's 31 plus 24?
Please don't make me do this. Is that 56?
55.
Okay.
I think that's what's going to be the score of this game. You said all week, you think Georgia needs to score a little bit more than it usually does in these games. Against Notre Dame, it scored 23. Against Florida, it scored 24. Against Auburn, it scored 21. I think if they can get to 28-31, that's going to be enough to win this game. I think LSU comes in 21, 24, 27, somewhere in that range. These Vegas guys, they know what they're doing here. By the slimmest of margins, I'm going to take the over in this game.
Yeah, honestly, I'm going to stay with the under, but your case is actually fairly convincing. I'm going to stay with my pick, which is the under, because for right now, Georgia's a straight under for me, really every single game. But Connor's right. 28-27, that's a number that I think that Georgia could win this game, and if that be the case, that's 55. A half a point, though, is not enough for me to move in that direction. Generally speaking, I feel like I need an under to get a Georgia win, and unders have been such a no-brainer rubber stamp play for Georgia all season long. I'll take that again. Dari, the flow is actually on the side. No, it's on the side of the under, right? Yeah, flow on the side of the under. You want to go with the flow and take the under.
Yeah, I'm going to take the under. It has to be under. For Georgia to be in this game and win this game, they got to control the clock. They can't let LSU score more than 28 points. Georgia doesn't have the explosive offensive players like they did last year. So they're going to need to play a different type of game, and I think they will, and I think it's going to go under.
Yeah, so I think if you're right about that, I think all things being equal, that ends up probably being pretty good news for Georgia all the way around. Dari, I love this time of year. I think it's really, really fun to do the conference championship games. I know you like them too. Best of luck on your picks this week. I guess let's also say this. At some point in time, we're going to do a bowl show. Why don't we get together after this weekend is kind of finalized and figure out where everything is, and we'll decide the best venue for us to make some bowl picks. I don't know if we do them confidence style, point spread style, whatever, but we'll do a fun R.S. Andrews Go With The Flow bowl show at some point in time. How does that sound to you?
Yeah, sounds good. Looking forward to it.
All right, we'll do that. And by the way, if you find yourself in a situation where your plumbing goes out this weekend, keeps you from watching the game, you have a water heater issue, anything like that, or if it's just cold in your house because the heat's not working, well, R.S. Andrews can take care of all of that for you. rsandrews.com, that's the website to go to. They will take good care of you on that, and they have made it so much fun to do Go With The Flow here all season long. They just like the college football conversation. You hear Dari talking each and every week. They just like having a good time. It's part of their overall, identity of delivering those smiles. It just doesn't mean, stuff when it comes to those situations around your house. It also means college football there as well. So we really appreciate R.S. Andrews being a part of Go With The Flow. And also, by the way, if you want to get your own action down on the games, make some money off your opinions on these picks, check out my bookie and use the promo code DogNation. When you do, you get a big first deposit bonus. You can get up to $1,000 first deposit doubled, but you've got to use the promo code DogNation. So do this very simply. Find MyBookie online. Just type it in your browser. The internet will do the work for you. Use the promo code DogNation. And after that, you play, you win, you get paid. But you've got to use the promo code DogNation with MyBookie. Y'all have a great weekend. I will look forward to seeing you here again very soon for Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. Enjoy the games, and good luck, everybody.
Brandon.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Go Dogs. Run the table.
There you go,
All the
Dory.
way to the natty.
There you go, Dory. We got